Hi everyone, Chris again. This is video 11 I think, and today is December 9th. Today I'd like to talk about the militarization of Canadian and American universities. So if you're not aware, there's been an increasing amount of surveillance on campus by intelligence agencies and federal police. That has resulted in a student movement at McGill University in Montreal, Canada. So the group is called Demilitarize McGill, and their objective is to stop basically like weapons research or tools that can be used for warfare at the university. So this is not unique to McGill, but McGill in Canada has a lot of the Department of Defense contracts in the United States. That's largely, I think the largest number of contracts are done at MIT, and Harvard is up there on that list as well. So Dalhousie's president, Richard Florzone, as you may or may not know, went to graduate school at MIT. Anyways, so the problem with that is that universities were designed for free speech, to share new ideas, not to push propaganda and conformity. We're seeing that today, and it's not unique to, like I said, it's not unique to one or two universities. Just from my own personal experience, I've taken classes at like I think 7 universities and 2 colleges, and they all promote independent thinking, but there's an agenda that encourages conformity, and that is no different in medicine. What you learn in the first 2 years of clinical sciences, or when you hit the wards, you realize that it's quite different. You talk about patient-centered care in the clinical sciences and how important it is, but then when you hit the wards, you realize if like pre-rounds or rounds, you might spend 2 or 3 minutes with a patient. So the idealistic way that we're taught in university is very different from how things are actually being carried out. So and that's a problem, because university, like, independent thinking is really something that really drives technology and innovation. And when we can't share our new ideas because we're afraid of how they'll be perceived, or if there's economic consequences to powerful people for that, then those ideas may get suppressed, and that's unfortunate, I think. So going back to Demilitarize McGill, there's CFD labs run by Derek Ruths. They've presented the research to the Central Intelligence Agency. Some of the research being carried out there by PhD students involves the use of social media, so towards online extremism, right? So as you may or may not know, for me, I've been subjected to harassment online through Facebook. So they're using this as an instrument of torture, essentially. So they go on and they try to manipulate mood by saying certain things, etc. So this is a problem. Right? So we have our universities funding research that is essentially trying to provoke people into an act of violence or an act of self-harm, which can't be all that surprising when you look at the actual data. So since 2001, what you may know is that since 2001, the war on terror kind of really blew up in terms of funding. We've seen a 30% increase in suicide rates, which is correlates kind of with the positive correlation with the amount of funding if you look through the years. So this is zersetzing torture being carried out. A lot of people don't even realize it's happening to them at the time. Also, you talk about 30%. Another interesting number is that you heard me earlier talk about MK Ultra, and one of the sub-projects being, several of the sub-projects being on schizophrenia, and also projects on how to reproduce signs and symptoms of medical illness. So people with schizophrenia have a 30% suicide rate as well. So 30% attempted suicide rate, I should correct myself. And through zersetzing, a lot of these people are being labeled as either delusional or schizophrenic, or if you go in and you say that the intelligence agency is harassing you, that's kind of what you get. So you'll never see anything different in the psychiatric notes, despite 1 million people today being on the watch list, being harassed. So there's a problem there. So we need to keep a close eye on this type of research, and it's currently going on at NOC Lab at Harvard. And in the past there was Dr. Harvey or Dr. Edwards, I forget now. Anyways, Dr. Murray, that's who it was. Dr. Murray at Harvard was conducting CIA torture research there for a really long time. Of course, this type of behavior modification research has resulted in students being converted into terrorists, whatever. But you can read up Dr. Murray, CIA torture, Google it, and you'll find all kinds of stuff. But they don't release the records on it. And ironically, they say it's to protect the individual they tortured. It's confidentiality. So you're seeing an element of two-tier justice there, where they're actually torturing people, and they themselves are being rewarded with whatever research funding, or are considered like leaders in the field. As I've shown previously, my own experience traveling throughout North, South, and Central America, you've seen on my network that all level 1 ISIS, all level 2 ISIS, and Harvard University, Cambridge University, the top universities in the world, on this network, right? So Trevor Aronson, brilliant guy, courageous guy for speaking out about the creation of terrorism. They're doing more than just creating it. They're doing research on new ways, better ways to create it. So, you may have heard the farewell speech by Eisenhower, Roosevelt. I don't remember. But it was a speech where he was talking about guarding against the unwarranted influence of the military-industrial complex. So today, what is essentially formed is a military-industrial academic complex. So you have the military-industrial components, but you have the academic component coming from universities, which are actually carrying out this type of research that is funded by the Department of National Defense. At Harvard, like the research NOC lab on suicide, people need to keep a close eye on that and find out what the true intentions are behind the research. I think other interesting research going on right now at MIT is on post-traumatic stress disorder and how to eliminate those memories. So with all this stuff, you got to consider, I guess, not just the topic that they're studying, but you know that these people have an interest in it, and probably there's a financial incentive to produce results, like any type of research. So you have to, I think we need to keep a close eye on that in terms of making sure that they're not using people basically without consent to do this, so to create new traumatic memories and then trying to erase them, as an example, right? With this type of research on impulse control, like trying to provoke people into a discrediting situation. This type of research on impulse control, and it's also being carried out at Harvard as well. So we can't be naive, and they're not going to tell us the true intention if that was it, right? They're going to say it's to reduce risk factors of it or whatever. But I mean, I think we both know that the CIA doesn't research things like schizophrenia for the health of the population, right? So we got to use our brains a little bit and think critically about these types of things. So, this militarization is also happening in terms of students being smeared. This has happened. This is happening across Canada at universities. You just look it up. I won't go into my own experience, but this has happened to students at McGill as well, as right across the country. So this is a problem. So we need to kind of look into some of these programs being carried out under clandestine services, in particular the Special Activities Division at the CIA. I believe this program may have been running probably in the range of about 70 years. And this program is one that basically bullies people into suicide through bullying and zersetzing torture. So a lot of people don't even know that this is happening. They just think it's bad luck, right? Which is exactly why we need transparency into these programs. And these black programs where you'll see maybe a budget, but you never find out anything about the program, that's really, really dangerous for the public, because we've seen how some of this has been carried out in the past, and it's been horrific. And then you figure 90% of the evidence was destroyed. Well, they didn't destroy the stuff that they want you to see, right? So you got to realize the most horrific stuff has been destroyed. So it's time to increase transparency there into those types of programs. And you see these massive networks emerging from universities. So just speaking in terms of Dalhousie, we have like some of our physicians are hired by the Callian Group. The Callian Group in Montreal also work. They don't just hire doctors, but they also hire. They work directly with the special forces in Canada. So you can probably see the formation of kind of like a tiny organized crime unit, where if they want to carry out something like that, they have the psychiatrists there to discredit somebody, and the special forces, special operations to carry out harassment against them. So, and also our president of the university, Richard Florzone, former graduate of MIT, and this guy has a tremendous amount of connections. So this is a guy who's worked with, I think it was Boeing. Whenever you're dealing with the airline industry like that, like these people have access to Interpol at their fingertips, right? Also, he's worked for I think as a senior financial advisor, for the World Bank Group. Now, this is one of the most powerful organizations in the world, who are notoriously hard on whistleblowers. So, these groups have. This is an individual with access to a lot of resources and has a lot of social networks that he can access. Also, the International Halifax Security Forum, Florzone's attended. You have people there like John McCain. You have the former Minister of Defense, Dalhousie alumni Peter MacKay, right? So top of the food chain in terms of national defense. All these people forming in one place. Um, this is, and then you're seeing multiple books being written at Dalhousie about these types of things that are going on, and there's never any charges pressed or anything like that. Individuals just get basically tortured to death, or incarcerated, like Tynes or Subani was chased from the country. So yeah, there's massive amounts of organized crime that happens in universities in the United States and Canada. Of course, there's lots of money there, and that. Like I think maybe in a previous video I talked about Michael DeGroot of McMaster University Medical School, who ended up accessing. Using Vito Rizzuto, head of the Sicilian and Montreal Mafia at the time, to go after the Carboni brothers. So there's a lot of organized crime that is being carried out, and that's why we need to be very cautious about the type of research that is being conducted at these universities. And the universities need to be transparent about that, not just to the ethics committee, but also to the public. So that's probably all I want to talk about. I think the video's getting kind of long. Well, maybe just I'll mention. I talk about this the suicide rates flying up. Through the roof since 2001 by 30%, and a lot of times this is whistleblowers or whatever, where they're coming after them. So I think Caroline O'Farrell, they of the RCMP had a lawsuit against the RCMP, and because she was drugged through horse feces and urine and everything else, was bullied, harassed, and they were playing a suicide game, betting on when she would do it. And there was another RCMP officer. I wish I could remember her name. I read the article a while back, but I think it was Krista Carlisle. I apologize if I didn't get the name right. But this is a woman who courageously stood up and reported this stuff as well. And as a result, I think she was around 53 years old, and she had ended up committing suicide. Yeah, these people are very, very covert at what they do. They're very good at what they do. They're doing very bad things. So the best thing you can do to protect yourself is use network protocol analyzers to see who's watching. And just be aware of the tactics that are used. So, long video. I'm going to cut it off there. I hope you guys are having a good week, and take care of yourself. Bye.